My name is Alicia Batten. I teach in the Department of Religious Studies at the University of Waterloo. My training and teaching area is in the New Testament and early Christianity, so I teach courses on the Bible and also on the world from which the biblical texts emerge. So in my classes, we spend a fair bit of time talking about the ancient social world. What were the values that ancient people living in the Mediterranean basin really held to be important to them? What were the different kinds of literary forms that they used? What was their culture like? What were institutions like, political, economic, family? We look at all of these things and then we read these ancient texts in light of their ancient context. I think by studying the ancient context, we can gain a better appreciation for what these ancient texts meant. So we can look at how they imitated, how they reinforced, but also how they challenged aspects of the cultures in which these ancient writers lived. So in my classes, we spend a lot of time just talking about what makes an interpretation of an ancient text a valid interpretation. What methods should we use? And I encourage a lot of discussion and debate in my classes so that students from all different kinds of backgrounds feel welcome to come and engage in the close study of these texts. I think by engaging in these debates in the classroom, debates that involve the discussion of religion, obviously, students are then better equipped to go out into the world today where religion clearly continues to be a very important force in the world, and they can analyze, they can try to understand, whatever their background could be, just how religion functions, how it works itself out in the world today. My research tends to focus especially on the letter of James, which is a short letter in the New Testament. I've always been intrigued by this letter. It's very short, as I said, but it has one of the highest densities of traditions that go back to Jesus, that is Jesus's teachings in the letter, and yet it never actually cites the figure of Jesus. So I'm intrigued as to why that is. James also spends a good deal of time talking about economics and poverty and wealth, and I think those continue to be very important issues to talk about in the world today. The courses that I teach mostly focus on texts that were written in Greek. So sometimes in the class we'll talk about different English translations of the text and think about what would make one translation more compelling than another. So that's really interesting when students bring in a variety of different translations and we talk about why they're different and what would prompt a committee, because it's usually committees who translate these texts, to translate it one way versus another. In class, as I mentioned earlier, we do talk about the ancient context, and one of the really intriguing things about the ancient world that's of interest to me is ancient economics. Ancient peoples had a very different notion of the economy. They understood the economy to be embedded in every aspect of life. So they didn't have something separate like we do today. We talk about the economy. Ancient people didn't understand things in that way. And for many ancients, if someone gained, it meant that somebody else was losing. So they had a notion of limited good. So then we turn to the texts, and as some people may know, many of the texts in the New Testament are very critical of wealth. So we try to understand these criticisms in light of this larger context about the ancient economy. And this, again, I think is important to think about for today's world, because economics is obviously a huge issue. There's lots of debate about it. So by at least offering a comparison from the ancient world to the modern context, I'm not necessarily saying we should be prescriptive, but by providing a comparison, we can think about the economy in much broader terms, and I think that can be really helpful to us. Finally, I would say that it's really important to study religion in an academic context, because we really want to model civil and rational discussion about religion. And religion continues to be a very vital force in the world. Whether one is religious or not, it doesn't matter. But it is important to understand just why religion continues to thrive, how it can be very powerful. And in doing so, I think we're better able to resolve conflicts that arise sometimes with religion as a factor, and one hopes to imagine and actually realize a much more peaceful world.